I stare out the window of my small apartment, watching raindrops chase each other down the glass. At 68 years old, I never imagined I would go from owning a mansion to renting this tiny place. I am Roberta, and 3 months ago, my 3 children inherited $65 million from their father, Harold. They repaid his generosity by throwing me out of my own home on a rainy night. What they didn't know was that their greed would lead to their downfall. If you're watching this, please let me know where you're tuning in from. Hit that like and subscribe button while I tell you how wealth destroyed my family and the unexpected way we found our way back. Harold and I built our life from nothing. We met in college, fell in love, and married young at 23. Neither of us came from money, but we shared big dreams and the willingness to work hard. We started our real estate business with a single fixer-upper in Seattle that we renovated ourselves on weekends while working day jobs. "We're investing in our future," Harold would say, as we painted walls at midnight. His vision was always clearer than mine, seeing potential where others saw only problems. That first house sold for a modest profit, which we immediately put into 2 more properties. Over the next 45 years, we built Harold and Roberta Investments into one of the most respected real estate development companies in the Pacific Northwest. Our portfolio grew to include office buildings, apartment complexes, and retail spaces across 3 states. We weren't billionaires, but we had created substantial wealth through decades of smart decisions and honest business practices. Our 3 children came along during those busy building years. James, our oldest, was always the serious one. From the time he could talk, he was making plans and organizing everything around him. Amanda, our middle child and only daughter, had her father's charm and my creativity. She could talk anyone into anything. And then there was Daniel, our youngest, who had a mind for numbers that astounded us from an early age. We raised them in a comfortable home, not lavish by any means during those early years. Harold insisted they learn the value of hard work. All 3 had after-school jobs as teenagers and worked in various departments of our company during college breaks. We paid for their education but expected them to maintain good grades. We wanted to give them advantages we hadn't had without spoiling them. As they grew older and joined the family business formally, Harold promoted them based on merit, not just family ties. James became our operations director, Amanda headed marketing and client relations, and Daniel managed our finances. They seemed to complement each other perfectly, and I was so proud watching them work together. "We've done well, Robbie," Harold said on our 45th anniversary, using his special nickname for me. "Built something that will outlast us." A month later, he was diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer. The decline was swift and brutal. Harold, always strong and vital, wasted away before my eyes. During those final months, he spent long hours with his lawyers, updating his will and planning for the company's future. I was too focused on his care and my grief to pay much attention to the details. Sometimes in the quiet hospital nights, as he slept fitfully, he would wake and share concerns about the children. "James is too rigid sometimes," he whispered one night. "Amanda can be manipulative when she wants something. And Daniel, sometimes I wonder if he sees people are just numbers." I dismissed his worries as the medication's talking. "They're good kids, Harold. We raised them right." He squeezed my hand weakly. "I hope you're right, Robbie. I hope you're right." Harold passed away on a Tuesday morning as I held his hand. The children seemed appropriately devastated. They handled funeral arrangements, supported me through the service, and stepped up to maintain business operations. I was so grateful for their strength during my darkest hours. As the initial shock of grief settled into a dull, constant ache, I rattled around our large family home alone. The children visited regularly at first, bringing meals and checking on me, but I noticed their conversations increasingly turned to business matters, and specifically to when the will would be read. Dad told me he had big plans for company expansion. James mentioned casually over coffee one morning 3 weeks after the funeral. Amanda nodded enthusiastically. He talked to me about a complete rebranding, something more modern. Daniel sat silently tapping figures into his tablet. I felt a small prickle of unease but pushed it aside. They were simply eager to fulfill their father's vision. What could be wrong with that Harold had structured the business carefully over the years? He held 60% of company shares, with the children splitting 30% between them. My 10% ownership was mostly ceremonial. While I had helped build the company in the early days, I had focused on our family and charitable foundation for the past 20 years, leaving business operations to Harold and increasingly to our children. What none of us knew was how dramatically everything would change at the reading of Harold's will. The lawyer's office felt too small for the tension that filled it. James sat stiffly in his tailored suit, constantly checking his watch. Amanda perched elegantly, her designer heels tapping an impatient rhythm. Daniel had brought spreadsheets, as if preparing to analyze his inheritance on the spot. I sat quietly, hands folded in my lap, still wearing Harold's wedding ring on a chain around my neck. Martin Greaves, Harold's attorney for over 30 years, cleared his throat and began reading. The preliminary statements were standard, but then came the surprising details. To my beloved wife Roberta, I leave our family home free and clear, plus the sum of $2 million. I nodded, expecting this modest provision. Harold and I had always planned to leave the bulk of our wealth to the children. To my children, James, Amanda, and Daniel, I leave my 60% ownership of Harold and Roberta Investments, to be divided equally among them along with liquid assets, totaling approximately $65 million. The children exchanged quick glances of satisfaction. Martin continued reading Harold's personal message. I entrust you with the fruits of a lifetime of labor, with the expectation that you will expand the business according to the principles that built it: integrity, fair dealing, and community investment. After signing various documents, we gathered for dinner at an expensive restaurant James had reserved. The children were uncharacteristically attentive, ordering my favorite wine and toasting their father's memory. To Dad's legacy, James said, raising his glass. Which will honor and grow, added Amanda. Daniel nodded. The numbers look very promising for expansion. The facade of family unity lasted through dessert. They dropped me at home with kisses and promises to visit soon. I watched their car pull away, feeling an inexplicable hollowness, despite their apparent concern. The first business meeting without me happened the very next day. I learned about it only when my phone rang accidentally during their discussion, and I heard Amanda say, "Mom doesn't need to be involved in this phase." Over the following weeks, subtle changes became impossible to ignore. James, who had visited twice weekly before, now came only for brief, distracted appearances. Amanda canceled our standing lunch dates with thin excuses. Daniel stopped asking my input on even minor family decisions. 6 weeks after the will reading, James approached me as I worked in the garden. "Mom, have you considered selling the house? It's so big for just one person." "This is my home, James. 40 years of memories are in these walls." He persisted. "It's a valuable property. You could buy something smaller, more manageable. Bank the difference." When I expressed no interest, his expression hardened momentarily before shifting back to concern. "Just think about it, for your own good." Amanda's disinterest in our previously close relationship became painfully apparent when she missed my birthday dinner, sending an expensive flower arrangement instead of coming herself. The card read, "So sorry, crucial client meeting. Rain check, love you." Daniel became the most transparent about his changed priorities. During a rare family dinner, he openly questioned the efficiency of maintaining my charitable foundation. "It's only producing a 3% social return on investment," he stated flatly. "Those resources could be better allocated." Your father and I started that foundation to give back to the community that supported our success, I reminded him. He shrugged. Sentimentality isn't good business. The final confirmation came when I overheard them talking in the kitchen, not realizing I had returned early from a doctor's appointment. We need to address Mom's drain on resources, Daniel was saying. She's emotionally attached to that house, Amanda replied. James's voice was firm. The property is worth $7 million minimum. That capital shouldn't be sitting idle when we could leverage it for the West Side development. I stood frozen in the hallway, my hand covering my mouth to stifle my shock. Dad was too soft, Daniel continued. $2 million plus the house. We could put that money to work. I backed away silently, my heart pounding. That night I called each of them, asking them to visit for a family discussion. They arrived promptly, perhaps sensing the seriousness of my tone. I overheard your conversation about the house, I said directly. Their reactions were immediate and coordinated. James looked wounded. You misunderstood the context, Mom. Amanda took my hand. We're just worried about you rattling around in this big place. It's not healthy. Daniel nodded. Isolation at your age can lead to cognitive decline. I'm 68, not 98, I said sharply. And this house is mine. They exchanged glances I couldn't interpret. Amanda squeezed my hand. You're still grieving Mom. Making big decisions isn't wise right now. By the time they left, they had nearly convinced me I had misinterpreted everything. Almost. What I didn't know then was that my children had already met with other lawyers seeking loopholes in Harold's will. They found none there but discovered something else, an obscure clause in the original company bylaws that Harold had overlooked during his meticulous planning. 2 weeks after our confrontation, James arrived with a stack of documents. Just routine paperwork, Mom. Tax stuff for the foundation. Needs your signature. I trusted my son. Why wouldn't I signed where he indicated not bothering to read the dense legal text. That mistake cost me my home. 3 days later, all 3 children arrived together. Amanda sat beside me on the sofa while James remained standing. Daniel couldn't quite meet my eyes. We've made some decisions for your benefit, James began. Amanda patted my hand. You're going to love the apartment we found for you. It's in a senior-friendly community. What apartment? I'm not moving, I said, confusion turning to alarm. Daniel finally spoke. The property transfer you authorized makes it necessary. What property transfer? James cleared his throat. The documents you signed included transferring the house to the company as an asset. The blood drained from my face. That's not possible. Harold left me the house in his will. You signed a waiver of those rights? Daniel said, his voice clinically detached. It's all legal. Legal? My voice rose. You tricked me. Amanda's tone remained soothing, but cold. It's for the best, Mom. We've found you a lovely 1-bedroom. The company will pay your rent for the first year while you adjust. I looked from one face to another, searching for some sign of the children I had raised. You can't do this. It's already done, James said, checking his watch. The movers come tomorrow. I spent that night in shock, calling the family lawyer, only to discover he couldn't help me on such short notice. These documents appear properly executed, Mrs. Williams. I'd need weeks to challenge them if there's even grounds to do so. The next morning dawned cold and rainy. True to their word, movers arrived at 8 sharp. I watched in stunned silence as strangers packed my life into boxes. No care was taken with my belongings. Photo albums were stacked haphazardly. The crystal vase Harold gave me for our 30th anniversary shattered when carelessly packed without proper wrapping. Please be careful with that, I begged, as they roughly handled the quilt my grandmother had made. We're on a tight schedule, ma'am, the foreman replied, not unkindly. Your kids said to be done by noon. When I tried to direct which items should go to the apartment and which to storage, James intervened. We've handled the inventory list, Mom. Everything's under control. By 11, most of the house was empty. Rain pounded against the windows as Amanda steered me toward her car. "Time to go, Mom. Please don't do this," I whispered. "This is my home." She checked her makeup in the rearview mirror. "You'll thank us later. That house was becoming a burden for you." Daniel followed in his car carrying only my overnight bag and a small box of essentials they had packed. We drove across town in silence, the windshield wipers keeping time with my breaking heart. The apartment was small but modern, located in a building that proudly advertised itself as independent living for active seniors. The furniture inside was all new, a bed sofa, small dining table and chair. Nothing from my home. "Where are my things?" "My furniture?" I asked, looking around the sterile space. "We've put the old stuff in storage," Amanda said. "This furniture is more appropriate for the space." James checked his phone. "The movers will bring some of your clothes and kitchen items tomorrow." "We need to get back to the office," Daniel added. "Big meeting about the West Side project." And just like that, they left. 3 quick kisses on the cheek and they were gone, leaving me standing alone among unfamiliar furniture as rain lashed the windows of a place that wasn't home. That first night was the worst of my life, worse even than when Harold died. At least then I had been surrounded by our shared belongings, wrapped in the comfort of familiar spaces. Now I had nothing but a strange bed and the sound of unknown neighbors moving above me. I sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing my clothes from mourning, unable to even cry. The rain continued relentlessly, matching my desolation. Around midnight, I finally broke down, great heaving sobs that I tried to muffle with a pillow. Apparently, I wasn't quiet enough. A gentle knock at my door startled me. An older woman with silver hair and kind eyes stood in the hallway. "I'm Eleanor from next door," she said. "I heard you crying and thought you might need a friend." I couldn't even speak, just shook my head and closed the door. I wasn't ready to explain my humiliation to a stranger. Later, I would learn that several neighbors had heard me that night, but didn't know how to help the new woman, who cried like her heart was breaking. As the night wore on, I felt the first crushing weight of a panic attack. My chest tightened. Breathing became difficult and the room seemed to spin around me. I slid to the floor, gasping for air, certain I was dying, and in that moment, not entirely sorry about it. Morning found me still in yesterday's clothes, huddled on the bed I'd finally crawled into as exhaustion overtook panic. My phone showed no messages from my children asking how I was settling in, no calls to check if I needed anything. Nothing. I had never felt so completely abandoned in all my life. The weeks that followed blur together in my memory. I moved through days mechanically, barely eating, sleeping too much, yet never feeling rested. The few boxes of my belongings that arrived contained seemingly random items: winter clothes and springtime cookbooks, but no cooking utensils, framed photos with the glass cracked. I had my $2 million, but even that became complicated. When I went to withdraw funds to buy necessities, I discovered my access had been limited to small monthly disbursements for my protection, according to the bank manager. "Your son James set up this arrangement," she explained sympathetically, "as your designated financial caretaker." I hadn't authorized that, but proving it would require lawyers and energy I simply didn't have. My neighbor Eleanor continued her gentle campaign of kindness, leaving homemade soup at my door or inviting me for coffee. After 2 weeks of mostly declined invitations, I finally accepted, too exhausted by solitude to refuse any longer. Her apartment was warm and lived in, filled with books and colorful throws. She served coffee in mismatched mugs and didn't press me to talk. "I was a family court judge before retiring," she mentioned casually. "Saw a lot of families at their worst." Something about her calm directness broke through my fog. "My children took my house," I said suddenly, "tricked me into signing it away." Eleanor didn't look shocked or pitying, She simply nodded. Financial elder abuse is more common than people realize, even especially in wealthy families. Elder abuse, I'm not elderly, I protested weakly. The law says otherwise. And what they did was wrong, Roberta. Possibly illegal. That conversation planted the first seed of something beyond despair, a tiny flicker of righteous anger. Eleanor gently suggested I speak with a lawyer friend of hers who specialized in elder issues. Patricia Winters didn't look like any lawyer I'd imagined. With her bright scarves and statement jewelry, she seemed more like an art gallery owner. But her mind was razor sharp. Based on what you've described, we could potentially argue the documents were signed under duress or with inadequate disclosure, she said, after hearing my story. The fact that your late husband explicitly left you the house in his will strengthens our position. I don't want to sue my children. I said the words tasting bitter. Patricia's expression softened. Right now, we're just exploring options. But I want you to understand that what happened to you wasn't right, and you have recourse. That night, looking around my sparse apartment, I remembered something Harold had said during his final weeks. I've left some things with Martin that you might need someday, just in case. Martin Greaves. Harold's longtime attorney seemed unsurprised by my call. Your husband left a sealed package with instructions to give it to you if you ever asked, he confirmed. I can have it messengered over today. The package contained old business records correspondence between Harold and the original company lawyers, and most precious, Harold's personal journal from the last year of his life. I spent days poring over the materials, slowly reconstructing Harold's concerns and intentions. His journal entries were particularly revelatory. James pushed hard for the lakeside development today, one entry read. When I mentioned environmental concerns, he dismissed them as regulatory hurdles to work around, not the values I built this company on. Another entry. Amanda presented marketing plans that stretched the truth about property features. Had to remind her our reputation depends on honesty, not slick promises. And about Daniel. Caught Daniel reducing maintenance budgets on the affordable housing units again. When challenged, he called them underperforming assets. Had to remind him people live in those buildings, not just numbers on a spreadsheet. The most painful entry came just weeks before his death. I worry about Robbie. The kids see the business as their inheritance, but they don't share our vision for it. They see profit, not purpose. I've structured things to protect her, but I know they'll look for angles I haven't considered. Tears blurred my vision as I realized Harold had seen our children clearly, while I had been blinded by maternal love. The journal entries continued documenting his growing concerns, even as his health failed. He had known they might try to circumvent his wishes, but had been too ill in the end to close every loophole. That painful recognition became the turning point in my grieving. I began to accept that the children I thought I'd raised didn't exist, perhaps had never existed as I'd imagined them. With Eleanor's encouragement, I ventured out to the community center across from our apartment building. They offered classes in everything from watercolor painting to basic financial literacy. I started with a gentle yoga class, my body stiff from weeks of inactivity. The instructor, a serene woman in her 70s, approached me after class. First time is always the hardest, but you showed up, and that's what matters. Those simple words echoed in my mind. I had shown up. I could keep showing up one day at a time. I began reconnecting with old friends the children had gradually isolated me from over the years. My college roommate Barbara was shocked to hear about my new living situation. I tried calling you for months after Harold's funeral, she said when we met for lunch. James always said you were resting or not feeling up to visitors. Similar stories emerged from other friends. My children had systematically cut me off from my support network while presenting themselves as concerned caretakers. At Eleanor's suggestion, I joined a support group for seniors dealing with family estrangement. The stories others shared helped me realize I wasn't alone or uniquely foolish for trusting my children. Gradually, I began rebuilding my life. I took a pottery class and discovered a latent talent for creating delicate ceramic pieces. I volunteered at the community library, reading to children during Saturday story hours. Small pleasures, but they were mine, chosen freely. Patricia kept me updated on potential legal options, but I remained hesitant to pursue them. Despite everything, these were still my children. I hoped time and distance might bring clarity to all of us. What I didn't expect was how quickly their world would begin to unravel. I first noticed the change while having coffee with Eleanor one morning. She was scanning the business section of her newspaper when she paused. "Roberta, isn't this your family's company?" The headline read, "Williams Investment Group faces investor concerns after risky pivot." The article detailed how the previously conservative real estate firm had made a sudden aggressive move into cryptocurrency investments under James's direction. The company had purchased millions in various digital currencies just before a major market correction. "He always did jump on trends without doing proper research," I murmured, remembering how Harold had tempered our oldest son's impulsiveness. Over the following weeks, more concerning news emerged. Amanda had launched an expensive rebranding campaign, complete with a new company name, Pinnacle Development Group, that erased all reference to Harold and the company's established reputation. The sleek new marketing materials promised luxury properties with amenities that existing buildings couldn't possibly support. Meanwhile, Daniel had implemented severe cost-cutting measures that affected quality and service. Maintenance requests in their apartment buildings went unanswered. Commercial tenants complained about broken elevators and security issues. The most damaging blow came when Westerfield Construction, our largest business partner for 20 years, publicly pulled out of 3 joint projects. The new management direction doesn't align with our values or quality standards. Their CEO stated diplomatically in a press release that sent ripples through the industry. I watched it all from my small apartment, gathering news from business journals and industry contacts who still respected Harold's legacy enough to keep me informed. Each development brought a complicated mix of vindication and heartache. I took no pleasure in their failures, but I recognized the justice in consequences following poor choices. The children who had presented such a united front in dispossessing me now turned on each other. Industry gossip reported shouting matches in the boardroom. James blamed Amanda's expensive rebranding for their cash flow problems. Amanda accused James of tanking their finances with his crypto gamble. Both criticized Daniel's alienation of their tenant base. 6 weeks after the first negative press, I learned that long-term employees were resigning en masse. Harold had built a company culture of loyalty and fair treatment. The children's cutthroat approach drove away the very people whose institutional knowledge might have saved them from their worst mistakes. Local business media began running features with titles like "Family Business Implosion When Succession Goes Wrong" and "Williams Investment Group, A Cautionary Tale." One particularly detailed analysis estimated they had lost nearly $20 million in value in just 10 weeks. As their business troubles mounted, personal problems emerged that affected their judgment further. A former assistant confidentially informed me that James had developed a gambling problem, frequenting high-stakes poker games with money siphoned from company accounts. Amanda was spotted at business functions visibly intoxicated, making inappropriate promises to potential clients. Her drinking had apparently accelerated as pressure mounted. Most shocking was the news about Daniel. He faced a potential sexual harassment lawsuit from a junior financial analyst who had recorded his inappropriate advances and subsequent threats when she rejected him. By the 3-month mark after my eviction industry analysts were openly discussing bankruptcy possibilities for the company Harold and I had built over 45 years. The children had burned through an astonishing amount of capital in their reckless attempts to modernize the business. I took no steps to intervene. This was the path they had chosen. They had valued money over family profit, over principles. Perhaps this painful lesson was necessary. Then came the voicemail from James, his voice lacking its usual confidence. "Mom, we need to talk. It's important. Please call me back." I didn't return the call. If they wanted to speak with me, they could make a proper effort. 2 days later, as rain poured outside my window in an echo of the day they'd evicted me, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't entirely surprised to find all 3 of my children standing in the hallway, but their appearance shocked me. James's normally immaculate suit was rumpled, his tie askew. Amanda's designer outfit couldn't hide her bloodshot eyes and drawn face. Daniel, always so composed, kept nervously adjusting his glasses, his confident posture replaced by anxious stooping. "Mom," James began, his voice catching. "Can we please come in?" I stepped aside silently, watching them take in my small apartment with new eyes. "It's nice," Amanda offered weakly. "Very efficient use of space," Daniel added, the financier in him automatically calculating cost per square foot. I gestured to my small sofa and single armchair. "Please sit. I'm afraid I don't have much to offer you." A heavy silence filled the room as they awkwardly arranged themselves on furniture meant for fewer people. The rain beat steadily against the windows, underlining the tension. James cleared his throat. "Mom, we owe you an apology." "Several apologies," Amanda interjected, her eyes welling with tears that seemed theatrical despite their apparent sincerity. I folded my hands in my lap, waiting. After what they had done, they would need to do better than vague expressions of regret. James continued when I didn't respond. "We made some mistakes with the company, big mistakes." "Catastrophic mistakes," Daniel clarified, always precise with numbers. "We've lost $47 million in 93 days. The West Side development is falling apart," Amanda added. "Contractors are walking off the job because we can't make payroll." James leaned forward, his expression earnest. "We need your help, Mom. Your connections in the industry, your relationship with Westerfield Construction. Dad's old partners still respect you." I studied their faces, searching for genuine remorse, rather than just regret over financial losses. "You threw me out of my home on a rainy day, much like this one. You took everything familiar from me. You isolated me from my friends. And now you want my help." Amanda reached for my hand, which I carefully moved away. "We were wrong, Mom, so wrong. We got caught up in the money and the power. We thought we knew better than Dad," James admitted. "We were arrogant." Daniel, less emotionally expressive than his siblings, offered his version of an apology. "Our projections failed to account for the value of established relationships and reputation. It was a significant miscalculation." I almost laughed at his clinical assessment of their moral failure. "And now that you've destroyed what your father and I spent 45 years building, you come to me." "Families should stick together," Amanda said softly. "We need each other now more than ever." The transparent manipulation in that statement clarified everything for me. Even now, they weren't truly sorry for hurting me. They were sorry their plans had failed. "What exactly are you offering?" I asked, my voice steady. They exchanged quick glances before James answered. "We thought you might want to move back home. The house has been... well, it's been empty mostly." "We could be a family again," Amanda added with forced brightness. Daniel nodded. "The financial benefits of consolidating households would be substantial." I let the silence stretch, watching them grow increasingly uncomfortable. "So, You're offering to let me move back into my own home that you took from me through deception. James winced at my directness. When you put it that way, how else should I put it? I stood up, finding strength I didn't know I still possessed. You believed I was a burden, an obstacle to your ambitions. Has anything really changed except the state of your bank accounts? Their protests overlapped as they scrambled to convince me of their sincerity. In their desperation, they began blaming each other. It was James's idea to transfer the house, Amanda blurted. You're the one who suggested limiting her bank access, James fired back. I merely implemented the decisions you both approved, Daniel countered. I watched them turn on each other, revealing even more betrayals I hadn't known about. They had sold my art collection. They had redirected my charitable foundation funds to company projects. They had told my friends I was suffering from cognitive issues to explain my sudden absence from social circles. As their accusations flew, I saw them truly for the first time not as the children I had raised and loved unconditionally, but as the adults they had chosen to become. In that moment of clarity, I felt an odd sense of peace. When their arguments exhausted themselves, I spoke quietly. I'll need time to think about this. Panic flashed across their faces. James recovered first. Of course, Mom. Take all the time you need. He hesitated before adding, but the bank is meeting on Monday about calling in our loans. We could give you full control of the company, Amanda offered desperately. Put everything back in your name. Daniel nodded. We've drafted the paperwork already. So they had prepared a contingency plan before arriving. That calculated move told me everything about their true motives. I'll call you tomorrow with my decision, I said, moving toward the door. They had no choice but to leave. As I closed the door behind them, I heard Amanda begin to cry, and James mutter, "That could have gone better." I spent that night in deep thought, consulting with Eleanor and calling Patricia Winters to discuss my options. By morning, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. The meeting at Patricia's office the following day had the formal atmosphere of a business negotiation rather than a family reconciliation. My children arrived with their lawyers looking marginally more composed than the previous day. Patricia had prepared a conference room with documents already laid out. My children's lawyers inspected the papers with obvious concern. These terms are highly unusual, one of them began. They're non-negotiable, Patricia replied smoothly. I sat at the head of the table, a position Harold would have occupied in business meetings. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone present. Before we begin, I said, I have something to say. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to me. Family is built on trust and mutual respect. Business is built on integrity and fair dealing. You have violated both sets of principles. Harold and I taught you better than this, which makes your choices all the more disappointing. I made eye contact with each of my children in turn. That said, you are still my children. I don't wish to see you fail completely or watch your father's legacy disappear. So I am willing to help you, but only on my terms. I nodded to Patricia, who summarized the agreement. Mrs. Williams will provide business guidance and access to her industry contacts under the following conditions. 1, full restoration of her ownership of the family home, effective immediately. 2, establishment of an irrevocable trust, protecting her financial assets from any future manipulation. 3, mandatory family counseling sessions twice monthly for 1 full year. James started to object, but Daniel quieted him with a hand on his arm. The financial reality of their situation left them little choice. Additionally, Patricia continued, while Mrs. Williams will advise on business recovery, she will not assume legal liability for existing business problems. The company will remain in your names with all associated responsibilities. You're making us keep the mess we created, Amanda said slowly. I'm giving you the chance to clean it up, I corrected her, with guidance. After a brief private conference, they accepted my terms. The alternative bankruptcy scandal and the complete loss of their inheritance was worse. The paperwork was signed within the hour. By that afternoon, I had the keys to my home again. Returning to the house brought mixed emotions. In the 3 months of my absence, it had taken on a neglected air. Mail had piled up, dust-covered surfaces. The garden Harold had loved was overgrown with weeds. They couldn't even maintain it properly, I murmured, as I walked through empty rooms that still held the echo of happier times. The physical rebuilding of my home became a metaphor for the emotional work ahead. I hired cleaners to remove the dust, but personally sorted through possessions the children had left in disarray. I engaged gardeners to tackle the larger yard work, but planted new flowers with my own hands. Setting boundaries with my children proved more challenging than restoring the house. Our first family counseling session was tense and unproductive, with more blame shifting than responsibility taking. The therapist, Dr. Mercer, had extensive experience with family business conflicts and remained unruffled. "This process will take time," she assured me privately. "Financial trauma creates deep wounds on all sides." Parallel to therapy, I began working with the children to stabilize the business. My first step was arranging a meeting with Thomas Westerfield, whose construction company had been our most important partner. "I'm doing this for Harold's sake," he told me bluntly when we met for lunch. "And yours. Not for those kids who thought they could cut corners on building safety." "They're learning hard lessons," I acknowledged. "Expensive ones." He studied me thoughtfully. "You're tougher than they gave you credit for, Roberta." With Thomas's tentative agreement to restart one joint project under strict oversight, we began the long process of rebuilding the company's reputation. I insisted on sitting in on all major meetings where I taught by example rather than directive. When James proposed another trendy investment without proper research, I asked targeted questions that revealed the flaws in his thinking. When Amanda presented marketing materials with exaggerated claims, I reminded her that lost trust costs more than any advertising campaign could recover. When Daniel suggested further cost-cutting measures, I had him meet with tenants to hear directly how his previous decisions had affected real people. Slowly, painfully, they began to change. Not from sudden moral enlightenment, but from the practical recognition that Harold's business principles had been successful for good reasons. Our family therapy sessions gradually became more productive as well. 6 months in, James finally made a breakthrough. I was angry at Dad for dying. He admitted surprising even himself with the realization. I wanted to prove I could do better than him, make more money, grow faster. I wanted to eclipse his success so I wouldn't have to miss him so much. Amanda's moment came during a discussion about the house. I resented that Mom got to stay there with all the memories while we had to keep working. It felt like she got the emotional legacy while we just got the business problems. Even Daniel eventually opened up. "I never felt I could meet Dad's expectations. The only way I could measure success was with numbers. More profit meant I was finally good enough." These insights didn't instantly repair our relationship, but they created space for genuine healing to begin. I maintained my boundaries while gradually allowing more warmth to return. 9 months after their desperate arrival at my apartment door, we established a new family foundation, focused on affordable housing, with a requirement that each of them personally volunteer hours, not just contribute money. "You need to meet the people your business decisions affect," I explained. "Your father and I never forgot that real families live in our buildings, real businesses operate in our commercial spaces." The company recovered gradually, though it would never regain the full value it had before their reckless decisions. That consequence seemed appropriate, a permanent reminder of the cost of putting profit above principle. A year after our reconciliation process began, we gathered for Thanksgiving dinner at my home. The atmosphere was different from previous family holidays, more authentic, less perfect, but somehow stronger for having been broken and mindfully repaired. As I looked around the table at my children, humbled by failure slowly rebuilding their integrity, I felt Harold's presence strongly. He had seen their weaknesses clearly, but loved them anyway. I was finally doing the same. "I have something to say," I announced as dinner ended. They looked up expectantly, perhaps anticipating criticism. Instead, I offered perspective. "This past year has taught me that love doesn't mean allowing mistreatment. It sometimes means letting people experience the consequences of their actions. True family legacy isn't measured in dollars, but in values lived daily." Harold understood that. "I hope you do now, too." Daniel, usually so reserved, reached for my hand. "Thank you for not giving up on us, Mom. We didn't deserve a second chance." "Family isn't about deserving," I replied. "It's about becoming better together even through the hardest lessons." That evening marked not an ending, but a new beginning for me as a woman who had found unexpected strength in adversity, and for my children as adults who were learning at last what truly matters. Has anyone in your family ever betrayed your trust? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share with someone who might need to hear that setting boundaries with family is sometimes the most loving thing you can do. Thank you for listening to my journey. May your own path be filled with wisdom, even when it comes through painful experiences.